front-end developer with Craver Solutions, and I like to refer to myself as the lazy developer. Not lazy as in I don't do anything, but lazy as in let's find the easiest path to do the things. Okay, sorry, give me 1 second. So today we're going to talk about embracing automation, and we're going to use Craver on mobile as a case study. Or how to be lazy. So the goals, sorry, themes for this talk, actually, give me 1 second, because I cannot read my own notes on the screen. But I brought a lo-fi solution, which is paper notes, just in case I couldn't read the screen. We're facing in a different direction. All right, so the themes for this talk. We want to identify areas of improvement that lead to automation. Usually this involves reducing divergence in areas you want to automate, increasing predictability, and using repetitive steps as a guide to guide your attention as far as what needs to be automated. And I also want you to see automation as a journey and not a destination. I think a lot of people just think about sorry, I will slow down and I will speak louder. I think a lot of people see automation as the final result of what happens, as opposed to all the little steps we take along the way to get there. Okay, see that. So one of the things I've been repeating to my team the last 2-3 years is that if it's predictable and repeatable, then it's automatable, because that's where it boils down to. We need to identify where things are currently not predictable, but should be, and see where we can make things repeatable within the code in order to automate them. Before we get into the case study, let's talk a little bit about what automation is in software development. So what is automation in development? According to Techipedia, automation is the creation and application of technologies to produce and deliver goods and services with minimal human intervention. Having heard this definition, what do you think of when it comes to embracing automation in development? What most people think of is that it looks like completely dropping everything that you're working on and just focusing solely on automation, spending months in development on the latest technologies, and somehow ending up with a glowing new product that kind of does all the things, maybe a little magic. But this isn't a realistic situation for most companies. We can't jump right in and spend all of our time on a fully automated solution. We have existing clients waiting for updates and for features, and those clients might not see the benefits of automation for a long time. So what does it really look like? Automation in our world is actually a series of small steps which together leads to big outcomes. So we write scripts for repeatable tasks, we find ways to make the process of building apps composable, we want to reduce the friction between the client and the product, and we want to identify solutions for the current stage of your app and then keep reevaluating as you go. The ultimate goal of automation is to reduce the time to get the app to the customer, reduce human error, reduce wasted productive development time, and ultimately to improve the developer experience. Yeah, that's right. Automation is about making your job better, giving you the freedom to work on fun and challenging projects without getting stuck on the boring parts. So now, a quick humble brag before we go into the case study. Too quick. Which is that we were named the 2022 and 2023 Workplace Culture Leader and 2022 Great Places to Work winner. That is for our marketing team. Let's get on to the case study. Okay, so the founders of AY Technology were actually started as a consulting agency for custom mobile web apps. They were approached by a few local restaurants who wanted custom apps, but they couldn't move forward for various reasons. In particular, custom mobile apps at the time were being quoted at $80,000 to $100,000 before they would even see any value. We're talking small coffee shops, your one-off pizza shop, that's months worth of revenue that would cost them. The time to build a completely custom app and the backend would be several months. And most of the competition, like if you're talking a small coffee shop, Starbucks already has a mobile app. So they're already fully branded and out in the world, and they're kind of losing out. So Amin and Shabnam, who are our co-founders for Craver, saw this as an opportunity. So while working with a business coach, they decided to focus on one area, local coffee shops and restaurants. Before they even had their first client, they actually started getting to work. They built out the first portions of the framework and started a campaign of cold emailing clients across North America, which is just ridiculous to me, to go city by city and just email all the restaurants. After 3 months, their campaign was successful, and Pizza Garden was their first client. So that's actually a local pizza chain. It took another 2 months of fixing bugs and working with Pizza Garden's designer before the app went live. So the first release took 4.5 months, and it happened on October 28th of 2017. So woohoo, clients, we're all excited about that. Somebody actually believes in the vision enough to give us their money. This is the good stuff. All right, so building momentum. So working with various partners, including Speedline, Square, these are all POS integrations, Alpha and Toast, the client base did actually slowly increase, and it meant focusing on getting apps out the door. Sorry, yep. And into the hands of clients. There were a lot of steps in the beginning. Creating branches off develop, manually doing setup for required configuration like Sentry, Firebase, database entries, manually downloading image and font assets for each project, manually changing the same style variables on every single page, manually setting up features, like if we wanted to add delivery or remove delivery, you would just comment the feature out in the code, and managing static wording in each project. But manual steps are prone to user error and, more importantly, a distraction from the primary goal of fulfilling our business obligations, or making your app to the devs. Saving an hour of setup time helps maintain developer focus. And I'm not sure about you guys, but I'd rather spend my time coding than wandering through endless GUIs for Firebase and Sentry and all this kind of stuff. It just takes me away from coding. It's no fun. So we use scripting. It's a great tool. And many of these integrations have CLIs just for this purpose, to make the developer experience better. So let's look at how our apps looked at this point. So at the beginning, I'm sorry, I was expecting a slightly larger screen. I'm not gonna be able to see very well. But basically, I just gave an example of a button, so you can tell what's on the screen. The team was able to recognize that most of the apps require the same functionality. So having a starting branch to work from allowed the first several apps to come through rather quickly, considering a new app would take months to build. So we used develop, or the main develop branch of the Craver project, as a basis, and then created new branches off of that. So the entire contents of the develop branch was then copied into a new branch for a new app. The individual apps could then be updated based on their own unique requirements. We could set the required properties that match the develop branch. I'm not sure if you can see that, but down here, highlighted in white, these are the ones that match what's actually in the develop branch. And these ones in orange are added properties that we created just for Mr. Twisty in this case. This is great for getting apps out quickly to the client and provided a lot of flexibility. However, when you're aiming for automation, anything that deviates or is a change from the main develop branch is actually not a good thing. We don't actually want these kind of changes. These orange pieces represent a divergence from the core. So for automation, we need things to be predictable and repeatable. So, and diverging from branches is neither of these things. So let's take a look at how we did app updates and bug fixes at that time. So at this point in time, when we needed to make a fix to Craver's core branch, we would make a fix on develop. and then we would add it and merge that change one by one into each branch. This is very early in the setup, right? So we would merge the fix into Pizza Garden and into Railtown and Mr. Twisty, and kind of get the picture. Every single branch, we were doing it one by one. This is a lot of repetition, which means we have an opportunity to reduce the developer involvement. We can script this, we can change this, we can do something. So for 3 or 5 apps, this is a little bit annoying, but totally doable, just to get you through the hump. But once you get to 10 apps and more, especially early in the maturity of your app, this is a real pain. At the beginning, you're making changes all the time. So having to do that repetitively for every branch is a big waste of time. And the developer experience here, in need of improvement. So here we're at kind of like before, or just the first 10 apps or so. Took about 4 to 5 weeks to get an app out the door. It was the Wild West for branches because literally every branch could have a new feature or different features or the same feature implemented differently. A lot of manual setup steps, static wording, and every single client concern meant a new build. I'm not sure if I mentioned I'm focusing on the mobile projects. This means, iOS and Android builds for everything. Very time consuming. So at that time, getting clients is a good thing, right? Everybody wants more clients. But this current setup was not working for us. There was a lot of potential for branch divergence. The process of propagating fixes is repetitive, prone to developer error. The setup is repetitive. There's lots of different requirements that change over time. And honestly, 4 to 5 weeks is a long time to wrap up a developer. Especially if you're in a SaaS company, 12 apps a year per developer that's very terrible margins. So how about for the next 10 to 250 apps? How do we make it scalable? Do we add more developers? Or can we improve the process? We need to make some big changes to make this work for a future client volume, sorry. So scripting is where we started. Scripting the setup sped up the app creation process significantly. Setup tasks that used to take 10 to 15 minutes were now being completed in seconds. So just think about having to go through the GUI in Sentry to set up a brand new project. It's not long, but it's tedious. Setting up basic app colors throughout the branch, we actually got that down to about 30 minutes before having to go back and review where things ended up. It was a big change to the process and a much better way to keep the devs closer to the code. So the next big challenge that we needed to tackle was branch divergence. So we introduced Git submodules. Git submodules is like a versioned templating system. We're able to copy the versioned Craver project based on the commit, branch, or tag to the local Craver apps directory and apply only the differences that we've saved for each app. So let's take a look at Mr. Twisty, which is one of our clients for a while. So if you recall from our previous option, new branches used to keep a copy of all the JavaScript code, but now it's very different. Now we have a commit, a reference to a commit on Craver mobile. We have translations, which are differences from the core. We have style differences from the core and feature flags. Everything's getting to be a lot more predictable in the code, which means we're getting to a point where we can automate more. And also there were some basic setup files like Sentry, Firebase configuration. So we had about 99 files in the new app creation process instead of the entire repository. Another change that we worked on was storing version copies of feature flags and translations in the database. Didn't only improve our speed to get changes to clients, it also freed up much of our build time used per app in Bitrise. It also gave the option for the support staff to assist with more small changes. Again, keeping the developer focused on building and maintaining the apps. So all of these changes resulted in increased predictability, less divergence between the apps, faster app updates and new builds, and more of the boring stuff is offloaded from the developer, protecting that productive developer time. And, I don't think you can see it here. I think I deleted a slide. Oh, no, I just went the wrong way. And Derek and I joined in 2020, so that was a pretty awesome decision, if you ask me. All right, so now this is about the time when I joined. The amount of time it took us to build an app was 3 to 5 days. 3 for somebody who was experienced, 5 for somebody who was brand new. And that was the time that it would take from going through the developers to getting over to customer success. So this is pretty good. We moved from 5 weeks down to 1. But as devs, we always want to do better. Oh, also, at this point, our setup is largely handled by scripts. The remote updating of feature flags and translations was a fantastic change. It helped save a lot of time. And at this point, mostly only styling or new feature things were actually requiring an update. So let's look at what was holding us back from a one-click app. So new and updated apps are still taking too long to get to clients. There's still a lot of divergence between individual pages, and style updates still require a new build. And 3 to 5 days is still a long time to hold up a single developer. So how about the next 250 apps? There's still a lot of manual changes that are happening for each of the apps, especially related to styling. Since we can update other options over the air, what's limiting us from trying this with more app-specific items like styling? We needed a big overhaul. At one point, we had 6 or 7 devs working on this project, and honestly, it was a little chaotic. We created an internal component library to reduce the page-to-page divergence and improve predictability. We worked with the backend team to version and store the styles remotely, and we introduced a theme to reduce divergences between the apps and work towards a single source of truth for styles. This is terrible to look at, but sorry. There were 2 really big challenges that we wanted to overcome with the component library. The first was making sure that the same element looked the same across multiple pages. Being nearly 3 years of maturity in the app, we could confidently move forward with setting up a component library that worked for us. The second part was how long it takes to update the apps when the clients request style changes. And some clients, they request a lot of style changes. I think we have 2 or 3 apps where the clients were asking for changes almost monthly. And we're not talking like a couple of like, let's change this button. We're talking change all the styles straight from scratch. And with the previous setup, traversing the app page by page was almost as much work as starting from scratch. So if I was given one of these app updates tickets, I actually did start from scratch. It was actually less work and less trouble than trying to update with the existing styles. And it was still taking 3 to 5 days. Once we moved over to the internal component library, as well as wrapping the pages and components in a higher order component in order to use remotely fetched styles, the process sped up considerably. That button example that I have here, which you can't see because it's tiny, is our sign-in page and our sign-up page, which have very similar styled buttons. One's for signing up and one's for logging in. They're kind of defined almost exactly the same way with some small differences in order to account for where they're located in the app. This also increases predictability not only for what we expect as developers, but also for our QA. So it can increase the confidence in the apps or when we're upgrading and when we're creating new apps. So right now, our experienced devs take between 30 minutes and an hour to get an app together and off to customer success. And our brand new co-ops, apparently I'm not allowed to say new anymore because they've been here for 6 weeks, they're in the 1 to 2 hour range for building apps. This is a brand new app, we're updating an app. Styles can be updated remotely. The divergence between the apps is minimal. The divergence between the pages is minimal. And we have about 13 files that we update in the PR now, or less, depending on what we're doing. So you'd think that it would be great that we have app updates and builds down to an hour, right? Well, we're still in mobile land, and a lot of our work is kind of directed by external factors, like Google Play and Apple. If you're in React Native land and you don't know, there's an upcoming Google Play deadline, API level 33, required by August 31st. which requires the apps to be on React Native 71. We are not there right now, and we have over 250 live apps that we need to update by August 31st. So, as you can imagine, the concept of spending an hour to update 250, 300 apps is overwhelming is not quite the right word, but it does make you want to cry a little bit. Yeah, so we really don't want to test the limits of our devs either. We've been through this before. We did this last year when we were still, a couple of hours per app, 4 or 5 hours an app, and we did 40 in one sprint. And there were 6 or 7 of us working on it. It was terrible, and our poor QA. She just drowned in all of the things we were sending to them. Anyway, it's time, just styling apps, it's time consuming, mind numbing, and it skips all the fun. Not to mention that it's a tedious developer daily experience, right? So now that we have our feature flags, translations, styles all pulled in from the API, why can't we automate more of this process so we don't even need a dev to build an app? We can hand it off to support or even to the client. Let's look at the future of Craver. So what's next? Well, we have a few things that we want to do. We want to make things self-serve. So we're going to create an interface so that clients or our support staff can update styles remotely, as well as the copy, which is the text that you see in the app. Create an interface to upload menus, using self-served tiered plans to set the default features and interfaces to customize those options. We also want to move back to a single branch strategy. Now we are at the place where we have many of the pieces as little chunks, and we can now compose them into a bigger piece, which is the app. So we don't actually need individual branches anymore. We just need the pieces in between. Also, we want to remove devs from the styling and updating process. We want a one-click app. All of these steps will lead us along the path of a one-click app, but we aren't only looking for one-click app. We're actually looking for one-click app suite. So our web and kiosk applications already incorporate some of the changes that we've talked about today. And now we're working on unifying the entire experience, making it composable so that the future is self-served. That lets us developers focus on the fun things like adding new features, building out new options, and finding new ways to make the whole process more cost-effective and more interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the lazy developer mindset and embracing automation. How can you be a lazy developer and not get fired? Being a lazy developer is actually about your mindset. Constantly searching for ways to improve your developer experience, and that means automating repetitive tasks, especially if they are prone to error, will save you time in the future or consuming your productive development time, which is the main thing for me. I don't know about you guys, but I have like 6 hours a day where I can do awesome things, and then like 2 hours where I answer emails and review PRs and other things, and I do not want to take time from that 6 hours to go and set something up or apply some colors. It's boring. All right. So as far as a lazy developer mindset goes, you always got to be ready to make the developer experience better. Small automation steps can add up to big savings over time, so automate when reasonable. Note that I didn't say automate all the time. Not everything is worth automating. But if it's going to be repetitive enough that you're going to do it regularly, or you make a lot of mistakes doing it regularly, then it might be worth it. And spend the time to investigate what options are and find the value. Not to mention that automation is a team effort. Many of the things that we talked about today had to actually be built out by our back end in order to support the changes that we wanted on the front end. So be prepared to try out some options and present them to your team. As far as tools, scripts, finding things, evaluating code to find efficiencies, you have to have a thirst for curiosity, a willingness to make changes, because just finding out about it and then not doing anything is not going to help you any, and a desire to remove the things that are just wasting your time or too boring. And I like this quote for Bill Gates, thanks Guy. I choose a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it. And thank you very much. I don't have any developer-related positions at the moment, but our LinkedIn is there. We did, and then they have it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I remember when Amin, the co-founder, was an attendee. He used to come. He ran the React Native meetup as well.
Yeah.
Started small, but with engineering mindset, built a business. It's amazing. One-click apps without AI.
Yeah.
Amazing. Every meetup needs AI mentioned at least once. That's very important. Any questions for Tracey?
Thank you so much for the presentation. So I actually have 2 questions. I had 3, but you answered the third one. So the first one is more general. You have a common core for all apps. You have many names. How customizable are they because of having the same core everywhere?
Okay, so let me repeat it so everybody can hear you. So the question is, with a common core, how can we customize, how customizable are the apps, right? So we use feature flags to add features or remove features. So they're in the core, but whether they're visible or not depends on the individual set of feature flags. As for stylings, we actually have overrides literally for any option in this core. Derek gave you an example of what one of our styled components looks like, and it is currently a nightmare, but we can override it with anything we want, anywhere. Yeah.
I see.
How many feature flags in the app? In an app?
200?
Yeah.
About 200, yeah.
For a button?
Oh no, for the whole app.
Okay.
For the whole app. Yeah. Oh no, if you're talking about the button. How many were you asking about? 20? 25? How many props you could pass in? Quite a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 The second one is you mentioned the moving to React Native 71.
Yes.
Yeah? So as React Native, not only React Native, but especially React Native sometimes works, it requires you to kind of change other dependencies, right? Because
Yes.
of the version. So how do you?
How do I go about that process? So I actually create a new project in the version that I'm going to, a brand new project, and I slowly add libraries. If it's a big one, like right now, I'm literally doing this right now as a test. I do a test area first. So I have one that's got, I'm starting to set up Redux dev tools, and we've got React navigation. That's all I have in there right now. But just to start it up, and then I create individual pages, and every library that we use, I give it a page, and I try out all the functions that we use in our existing app to make sure that they're going to work, or what's deprecated. Do we need to change out libraries? We know when we're starting it out.
Cool. Well, round of applause for Tracey. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'll still be here, so if you have more questions, just come by me.
Fine, Tracey, if you've got questions. Another round of applause for our 3 speakers, Derek, Guille, and Tracey. Thank you. Yeah, find them on LinkedIn, hunt them down. If you want to give a talk,